15.3 magnetic planar. Easily, without doubt, the biggest magnetic planar which I have seen so far. Definitely bigger than Heidi's MP145 or even bigger than Muse Hi-Fi Power, which is another huge magnetic planar. Despite being huge, the most surprising part, perhaps pleasant part, is that it is surprisingly lightweight. It is not that big actually, as you can see here. I was able to wear it comfortably, like this, for many hours since earlier today. 3 hours in fact, no issue at all. I am not feeling any kind of abrasiveness, any kind of discomfort. And on top of it, depending on which ear tip that you choose to wear, I ended up using the soft silicone ear tip, which offers me the best balance of comfort and seal factor. Then you see the cable here. Despite being priced at 169 US dollar, it is kind of a bit surprising because, as it seems, when I check online, it only comes with 3.5 mm single-ended termination. So if you have a need to use 4.4 mm balance, you will need to purchase a 4.4 mm cable 2-pin connection separately. With an impedance rating as low as 14 ohm and sensitivity at around 105 dB. So you might be wondering, does it mean that this Kiwi ES Aether easy to drive? When I first received it, immediately I connect it to my phone here, which is Sony Xperia 1 Mark IV, a very weak source. I have to crank up the volume all the way to 80 at least out of 100. And even on some songs, I need to crank it as high as 95 out of 100. That is already an indication that this thing would require a bit of power to get proper listening headroom. And I would just simply say that the kind of output which I'm getting equates to at around probably 70% of what this Kiwi ES Aether is capable of delivering. And of course, being a magnetic planar, once you scale it up with power, then you start to hear the true potential of this Kiwi ES Aether, especially when you connect it to something like this iBasso DX340 here. I would highly recommend that, if possible, if you are getting this Kiwi ES Aether and you have a DAC amp which offers 4.4 mm balance, then it is absolutely necessary to change the cable to use 4.4 mm balance, because this thing, let me repeat myself, would require power to get the full potential. Are you familiar with Hi-Fi HE400SE? A very popular magnetic planar full-size headphone. And if you are familiar with Hi-Fi HE400SE, then I'm just going to simply say that this Kiwi ES Aether is in fact pretty much very similar sounding to that open back headphone. The tuning for this Kiwi ES Aether, with the kind of timbre which is very similar to that magnetic planar HE400SE, which also means that the speed, the transient speed, the pace, the rhythm and the timing, it is pretty much identical as well. However, it does appear that this Kiwi ES Aether seems to be a bit more refined, a bit more polished in comparison to that Hi-Fi HE400SE. Polished because I would say that when it comes to the resolution itself, the imaging, it is definitely better than that Hi-Fi HE400SE. It is definitely the kind of imaging and resolution which I would expect from a very well-tuned magnetic planar, comparable to Heidi's MP145 and also comparable to Leica S12 2024. But there are some caveats, and I'll just go straight to the point. The caveat being, first and foremost, the upper frequency. Depending on which ear tip that you use, and also depending on which kind of source that you use, if you choose wide bore ear tips, especially silicone wide bore ear tips, or should I say rigid type of silicone ear tip, wide bore, then what you're going to get is something which is a bit more metallic with the upper frequency. I am hearing the kind of metallic tint to the sound itself, the timbre itself. I have tested it with classical music, with pop music, with electronic music even, and especially rock and metal music. Any kind of song which contain instruments or string, the second part, the source itself, If you connect it to something which is relatively bright sounding, something which is very transparent, something like Shanling UA4, for example, or something which is like a topping DAC and amp, which is known to be quite clinical, then it is outright bright sounding, especially with upper frequency. So what it means is that in order to get the very best, the synergy factor for this Kiwi ES Aether is that you connect it to something which is warmer sounding. Then you're going to get something which I consider as being properly well balanced, being analytical and musical. Perhaps the biggest appeal of this Kiwi ES Aethers is in fact the lower frequency, the bass, the combination of the mid bass and the sub bass being very well tuned to not dominate each other. So what I'm hearing is something which I consider as a very fast, very tidy and detailed mid bass with a kind of impact and slam which is faster than dynamic driver, and the kind of sub bass which offer deep extension into the lowest frequency. So it is definitely very suitable for many type of music which require bass emphasis. Just like the rest of the sound frequency, the performance of the mid-range will be entirely dependent on the ear tip that you use and also the kind of source which you choose to use with it, synergy factor. And in my case here, like I mentioned earlier, I use narrow bore ear tip. And I also use this Ibasso DX340 here, which happen to run on AMP16, which is a tube amplifier. So you can say that it is warm sounding. And with that combination, I am getting something which I consider as beautiful with the mid-range itself. It is frontal enough. It is the kind of mid-range which offer rich and very well-defined mid-range when it comes to male and female vocal, especially deep-chested female vocal like contralto or even male vocal, baritone. I am hearing the kind of coloration which is pleasing to hear, which is very musical. And when it comes to the instrument itself, the attack of the instrument, especially violin, guitars, or even let's say percussion, it is fast, it is tidy, it is non-offensive. But I must also mention that with certain type of female vocal, especially high pitch in the upper mid-range area in the pinna region, then you might hear some sort of pinna glare, which means that there's a bit of emphasis, sharpness in the upper mid-range all the way to the treble region. Just like many other magnetic planar in the market nowadays, which are very well tuned, something like Hydis MP145, something like Leica S12 2024, Simgot ET142, and the list goes and on and on. We have so many magnetic planar. You can expect pretty much similar kind of technical prowess coming from these Kiwi ES Aethers. It has that kind of resolution, imaging, pace, rhythm and timing, speed. It is the kind of IEM for people who love macro detail especially, and even micro detail. The layering, the separation, everything just top notch. The soundstage, it is wide and open sounding, very airy, pretty much very similar to Hydis MP145. But comparatively, I will admit that I feel that Hydis MP145 still retain the crown for being the widest and most open sounding. Everything considered, assuming that you have taken care of the synergy factor, like what I mentioned earlier, this Kiwi ES Aether is definitely one of the top players when it comes to magnetic planar available in the market now. Thank you so very much for watching the video until the end. Without skipping, I hope. Now click like and subscribe, and also follow me on Instagram under the name of AndyAV. And also, if you'd like to support me directly, because all of my videos and reviews are unpaid, I am not earning anything, you can join the membership below for behind the scene, especially for AAV Insider and above, which will allow you to see what I am doing behind the scene, and I will share some of the items which I would normally not share in the public.